Hey friends, how's it going? Ash here, welcome back to Gents. Hope that you guys are doing well. Today we're gonna be taking a look at the new Lattafa Asad Bourbon. So this one was actually just announced like a couple weeks ago, I feel like, and it's already available. I picked mine up from Fragrance Buy. It was about $38 US. It's gonna fluctuate a little bit depending on Canadian to US conversion rates, and I would imagine as time goes on, that price is going to drop, but that's where it's at right now. And I'll have it linked down in the description below in case you wanna check this one out. So when I first talked about this one when it was first announced, I thought maybe it was going to be a Parfums de Marly ALTHAIR clone, because when it was first announced, the full note breakdown wasn't readily available for this one, and I wasn't exactly sure what it was gonna be. And I'll tell you guys right away, right off the top of the video, it ain't that. It does not smell anything like ALTHAIR, so it's not what it is. And actually, I'm not even sure that this is exactly trying to be anything out there, which we'll get into here in a second. But first off, let's go ahead and take a closer look at the presentation. That way you can see how everything looks. And it does have a couple bits and bobs that make it look a little nicer, at least compared to the other Asads. So first off, the box you have on the front there, name of the fragrance, name of the house, size and concentration. It is an eau de parfum. Bottle size is 100 ml. And that little sticker on the front actually sticks out. So it makes it look a little bit higher end, a little bit nicer, and has kind of this like bronze finish to it. You have Lattafa up on top of the box. You have that design that wraps around the side and back of the box where your sticker of authenticity is. And it's not exactly fully rubberized in terms of how the box feels, but it does have a little bit of a slightly rubbery texture to it, which I guess makes it feel a little bit higher end when you hold it in your hand. On the bottom of the box, you have your barcode and your badge code. My bottle was produced 12/20/24. Let's check out the bottle. It's your typical Asad design. You have the name of the fragrance, name of the house right there on the front. One thing I will say is this one feels a little bit higher quality than my Asad Zanzibar bottle did. I don't know if that's just the bottle I got, if I was unlucky. Let me grab it, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So here's Zanzibar and here's the original Asad. Zanzibar felt a little cheap to me. Have a listen. You hear that? It feels like there's something on the inside, like the bottle is encased in plastic, which is what's going on, but it feels like it's not in there snugly, so it just kind of rattles a little bit, and it sounds cheap. This one, much nicer. And you can hear that just in the tone. Just feels higher quality with these two, and Zanzibar feels kind of crappy. Anyway, back to the bottle. You have Lattafa on top of the cap. You have a sticker on the bottom of the bottle. The cap does click into place, and I overall like the color scheme here. Let's go ahead and share a couple sprays so we can check out the atomizer. It's okay. So let's get to the most important thing here, the fragrance itself. How does it smell? What is it similar to? Is it similar to anything? And first thing I have to say is this is a first impressions video. I just got this in yesterday, so I've not had this for a long time. I've not been able to wear this out and about a whole lot or anything like that. So first impressions, take everything with a grain of salt. The first thing that jumped out to me with this one is in the full note breakdown, off the top, there is the note of Mirabelle Plum. And that sticks out in a big way, because there's really only one men's fragrance that has that note in it, that's being worn, that's being sold, that's very popular today. And it's this one right here, Scandal Absolute. So when you see that note, the first thing that you should think of is, oh, this is probably this, which makes sense because Armaf just released this fragrance right here, Armaf Checkmate King, which is a clone of Scandal Absolute. So when you put all this together, you go, oh, well, Armaf came out with their Scandal Absolute and Lattafa came out with theirs right afterwards. That's what would make the most sense. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw Mirabelle Plum in the note breakdown of Asad Bourbon. That's not exactly what's going on. To be fair, there are differences in the note breakdowns here. So Scandal Absolute has a dumbed down note breakdown. Only 3 notes, Mirabelle Plum off the top, chestnut in the mid, sandalwood in the base. And Checkmate King over here, again from Armaf, has those notes, but they fleshed it out a little bit more. So you also have additional spicy notes, additional fruity notes, and additional gourmand accord, which yeah, honestly, those notes don't really tell you a whole heck of a lot. Not very specific, I should say, because it's like, oh, cool, you added some additional stuff in the note breakdown. What is it? Well, fruit, a spice, a gourmand. Like, oh, okay, thanks. That tells me absolutely nothing. But that's not all. There's also additional powdery notes, balsamic notes, and amber. But at the end of the day, when you look at the note breakdown for this and compare it to that, extremely similar, and you can tell what they're going for here. Asad Bourbon, on the other hand, actually does things a little bit differently. So yeah, it still has that Mirabelle plum right off the top, but then it also has these notes: pink pepper and lavender off the top, cacao, nutmeg, and Davana in the mid, and then bourbon vanilla, hence the name, and vetiver, as well as amber in the base. So yeah, you see the Mirabelle plum, but then once you dig down a little bit deeper, there are a bunch of differences. And I will tell you guys, if you're looking for just a straight up Scandal Absolute clone, between this and this one is better. Armaf Checkmate King, if you're looking for a Scandal Absolute clone, is a better one-to-one or replacement fragrance for Scandal Absolute than Asad Bourbon is. But how does Asad Bourbon actually smell? Well, when you first spray this one on, it is a little bit similar to Scandal Absolute. I would say if you like this, you'll probably like this one as well, but there are differences that are immediately noticeable. So Scandal Absolute has more of that, you know, almost caramel, deep sort of sweetness to it, whereas Asad Bourbon has more of almost a fruity sweetness. So yeah, they have that similarity of Mirabelle plum in there, kind of in the same overarching family style, just approaching things in a different way. More nutmeg, gourmand, warm, deep sweetness here in Scandal Absolute. And I'd actually say Scandal Absolute might be a little sweeter overall compared to Asad Bourbon. It just, like I said, approaches it differently. Spray that one on right now, actually. Might as well. Asad Bourbon is maybe slightly fresher, more sugary, more fruity sweet, not quite as gourmand, but still decently similar off the top. As it dries down though, Asad Bourbon starts to change a little bit, and it almost comes across like bits and bobs of maybe Scandal Absolute, but mixed with bits of Bad Boy from Carolina Herrera. And that's gonna be from the cacao note that's here in Asad Bourbon. The way it comes across is a little bit similar to how it's used in some of those Bad Boy fragrances. And it gives me almost like a little flashback to Asad Zanzibar. Not in the way that Asad Zanzibar smells anything like Asad Bourbon. It doesn't, not at all. Just how, when this one came out, initially people were like, oh, it's gotta be a clone of Le Beau Parfum or something similar to that, but then it was actually kind of its own thing. Maybe inspired by some other things out there, but not like a direct one-to-one with anything, so kind of like a twist, or what they would say in the clone world, a creation, which is to say that it's kind of doing its own thing. And so people were surprised with Asad Zanzibar, and I think the same thing is kind of going on over here with Asad Bourbon. You can pick out stuff from fragrances, like I said, Bad Boy, little Scandal Absolute as well, but it's kind of doing its own thing a little bit. So anyway, as Asad Bourbon dries down, as I said, that cacao comes out, very reminiscent of Carolina Herrera Bad Boy, at least in how that note comes across, not the overall fragrance, okay? You got a little hint of spice in there. It's actually kind of like a mix, and you know, partially fresh, a little bit warm, not like full-on sticky sweet or anything like that as far as how the spiciness comes across. And then you get that bourbon vanilla in there and the amber as well. And you would probably think actually that it would come across a little heavier, a little bit frankly sweeter than it actually does. Smells really good, extremely wearable, but not pushed as far down that sweet path as things like Scandal Absolute, which I love, or a number of other fragrances out there. So it actually has this little bit of freshness there that pulls it in slightly and keeps it very versatile. And the performance here is great too, but I will say, in side to sides with Scandal Absolute is stronger. So it's not like this is some unchained monster in terms of projection, longevity. It's really, really, really solid, don't get me wrong, Easily will last through the day or the evening. It's a good fall, wintertime fragrance, but Scandal Absolute does have more push to it. But as I said just a couple seconds ago, because this one does have, I would say, a little bit more of a fresh side to it compared to Scandal Absolute, it would be the more versatile of the two fragrances. I think this makes a good daytime or evening scent. As I said, definitely more fall, winter time, but good day or evening. It would be a solid date night fragrance, evening out fragrance, nice casual fragrance. You could use it for a ton of things. And it does have this extremely addictive quality to it. Asad Bourbon, the first time I sprayed it on, I was like, oh, that is really reminiscent of some other stuff. That's when I started comparing it to this and Bad Boy and some other fragrances. I knew right away, like I said, it wasn't ALTHAIR, but it has that quality to it where you just want to keep going back to it. And the more I wore it, the more I was like, oh, this is really good. So I would easily, for my own taste, put this one above Zanzibar. And really, you know, depending on what you're doing, I'd put it above normal Asad. Obviously, they're not really the same thing. This is an alternative to Sauvage Elixir after all, but I really like what they've done with this. Really nice. One other thing, not that it's super important, but off a tester strip, Asad Bourbon is noticeably more different than Scandal Absolute. Off skin, they're a little bit closer. Like I said, I don't think this is really a one-to-one with Scandal Absolute. I don't think this is like a direct clone, more a creation with a twist kind of thing. But off a strip, they're noticeably different. They're noticeably different. You get way more of that fruity sort of sweetness off a strip with Asad Bourbon, and Scandal Absolute is much deeper. It has that sort of slightly powdery aspect to it that you don't get off a strip here. Ultimately, that's not really important, but if you get these in and spray them on a strip and you go, oh my God, these are completely in different universes, yeah, they do smell that way off a strip. Off skin, they're a little bit closer. Still absolutely not the Scandal Absolute alternative I would point you to. If you said you want something that smells like this, that would be this. But with its own unique little flair, and for being under 40 bucks, and I would imagine as time goes on, probably under 30, Asad Bourbon smells pretty good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, Asad Zanzibar is going for like $17 on Fragrance Buy, and Asad is sold out right now, but I think that one's generally around what, like 20, maybe 22, something like that. So if we can assume that the same thing is gonna happen here, at that point, this is a steal. Still good for what I got it for, just under 40 bucks, but man, you cut that in half or close to, ooh, now you're cooking with gas. So overall, who is Asad Bourbon for? It's gonna be for somebody looking for a cool weather fragrance, who enjoys having a good amount of sweetness in their fragrances, not entirely removed from things like Scandal Absolute, but who also wants a slight fresh aspect to it as well, in the way that the spice comes across, with a good fruity sweetness in there as well to kind of pull people in when you first spray the fragrance on. Somebody looking for something with solid performance that's maybe not beast mode, but still gets the job done. And someone looking for a fragrance that has high versatility that can double as both a daytime or evening scent. That's what this is. So there we go, guys. Asad Bourbon from Lattafa. Absolutely 100% a better release for my taste than Asad Zanzibar. Big move in the right direction. Thank you guys for hanging with me. Stay safe out there. And if you have smelled this one, let me know what you think about it. I will see you guys tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys.